shall we start reciting Namo Tassa? Namo Tassa
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato
Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Bandy.
The video doesn't work, right? Something has happened. So today we'll be continuing the next sutta, Uhunka Jatika Sutta. Before that, information regarding locative tense used in the meaning of causal meaning, and it was the formation was locative absolute. So in the commentary, page number 37 of the Udana commentary, so this explanation is given. So it says hetu attehi bhumma nissakka vachanehi. So this in this sutta, the locative case and ablative case. Locative case in the imasmin sati idang hoti, and ablative case is imassupada idang upajjati, are used in the meaning of hetu, in the causal relationship. So you can find this in the last paragraph of the page 37, Udana commentary, page 37. So then the commentators give some other explanations. For example, in the one of, I think Mahachakkavati Sihanada Sutta, Buddha mentioned in the past time when the kings didn't give money to people, the poverty increased. So the example is given, Adananang dane anupadiyamani. When the money is not being given to the poor people, Dalidyam bepulla agamasi, the poverty got enhanced, it got increased. So here, not giving the money, when the money is not being given, the commentators say this is even though it's an absolute construction, the meaning should be understood as the causal relationship, because when the money is not given, due to that reason, the poverty increased. Nippannesu sassesu subikkan jayati. The country becomes prosperous when the crops are, we have rich crops, like crops are very, we have lot of amount of crops in paddy fields. So nippannesu sassesu. So when the crops have arisen, crops have occurred. So due to this, the country becomes prosperous. We can also consider them as, now in another perspective, we can say, because according to the commentary, they say this is the locative case in the causal meaning. So all the two examples are given in the locative absolute construction. The construction is absolute form, but the meaning is in the causal form. But there are sometimes the locative case can be also used as, yesterday Dr. Ryan asked the question, sometimes with the normal accusative case. In this scenario, we can also suggest that another approach is the absolute has, normally absolute has a explains another action through another action. Sometimes the one action can be a cause for another action. So in that case, still the absolute meaning is there, because when the money is not given, the poverty increased. When the crops are, when there are a lot of crops, the country becomes prosperous. So these constructions also have that absolute sense, like something happens when something is happening. At the same time, they have a causal relationship. So we can also explain this in another approach, that in the absolute construction, sometimes the two actions, if they have a causal relationship, that can also be written in absolute form. So personally, I feel both the approaches are good and they both make sense. That is for the yesterday's discussion. And
Good morning, Bante.
yes, good morning. So shall we proceed to the next sutta? Do you have any questions regarding the yesterday's sutta?
Yes. Hi, Bante. Since we still on the previous three suttas, may I have a question about
yes,
those
sure,
three?
Dr. Ryan.
So yesterday you when you talked about the sentence Imasubada idang upachati.
Yes.
Then you said that it depends on the situation. We can have different translation of the word ubada. So you said it depends on the nature of the dhamma. So can you please speak a little bit more about that?
About the different types of upada, you mean, right?
Yes.
So according to the commentary, they say three types of upada. Actually, it's not directly mentioned. If you read the entire commentary, you can find in different places in that particular commentary. One upada is the arising. Due to the arising of a certain reality, another reality arises. That is the one type of upada. That is like from non-existence to existence. That the arising we talk in Abhidhamma. Then the other type of upada is anirodha upada. Anirodha or apahana. Apahana means if a reality like the anusaya, latent defilements are not uprooted, if they are still existing within us in the latent form, this is still considered as upada. It is not the arising of a non-arising reality or arising reality. The commentators, the tradition says, if something has the potential to arise, that the latent tendency, if it is existing within us in a latent form, this is still called upada. The third type of upada is the kamma. The energy of the kamma, which is called the kamma sati, as long as the defilements, the tanha and avidya is supporting the argument. So as long as kamma, avidya and tanha is there, they have the ability to give a rebirth. When the avidya and tanha is eradicated, they lose that ability. So why that it is different from the previous explanation? Because the tradition holds the idea defilements are eradicated, kamma is never eradicated. Kamma cannot be eradicated. Kamma, what happens is kamma is not given the support by the defilements, so the kamma become inactive. So this is the argument. So therefore, the kamma which is backed, supported by defilements, if a kamma power is existing with the defilements, with the defilement means the person is not an arahant, he can still get a rebirth. So that kind of kamma is also called upada. So that's why there are three types of upada mainly: the just arising of a reality, the just existing as a latent tendency, and also as a kamma energy existing, being supported by the defilements before they are giving results. So if a kamma is in such a state, it's also called upada. That's why I mentioned that upada is applied to different contexts. It has different meanings.
Okay, thank you so much, Bante.
Hello, Bante. May I have
yes,
some idea about
yes
about absolute? Okay. I just have some idea. I do not ask. Absolute normally is you didn't give how to become absolute. And someone so for my idea, to become absolute, firstly with subject and verb, and verb should be changed to participle and present participle and agent nouns. Three kind of the participle. So we can it's tara also agent noun. So two kind of participle and agent noun. When we change the verb to that kind of form, so it's become the absolute. It's okay.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
You can see that.
Yes.
I will discuss this matter later when we come to further lessons. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Bante, may I ask
yes.
one question, Bante?
Yes, Robert.
I just want to make clear about the Bante's talk about the absolute Bante. So can we simply say that so it can be translated as absolute, but it has like two meanings in it. So absolute meaning and also causal meaning, Bante.
Yes, yes. That is also very appropriate explanation. Yes.
Okay, Bante.
But
so
the commentary doesn't explain it like that. Commentary just says it's just the causal meaning. The examples the commentary gives are also constructed in the absolute form. So that is why it seems like they are getting the absolute form. In that absolute form, you get a causal relationship. So instead of saying locative case is in the causal relationship, you can also mention that locative case can be found in causal relationships in some occasions. But instead of saying that, we can also mention normal absolute construction. Absolute has two meanings. Two meanings means mainly we can find two meanings. One action happens while another action is happening. For example, while the Buddha was going, the rain fell. While I was going to the city, it rained. Rain is not caused by my going. It's just, they happen at the same time, simultaneously, right? So, but if some action is caused by another action while happening together, that is another extra meaning. So that's why I mentioned we can have also have the approach through absolute and telling sometimes the absolute two actions which I explain in absolute may have a causal relationship.
Okay, Bante. So in the translation, it means it's okay if we just translate it as absolute, Bante, when translating.
Yes, that's why I yesterday asked from Dr. Ryan, when we use the word when, sometimes it can have a causal meaning, but not always, he mentioned, right?
Yes, Bante. Maybe we should see the context as well.
Yes.
Okay,
so
Bante.
that's why if sometimes it can have the causal meaning. So to be sure, if you are giving a translation, I personally prefer if you can give a footnote explaining.
Yes,
though it
Bante.
is when, but there is what we are explaining here, the causal relationship, because just when can cause gives other meanings as well.
Yes, Bante. Footnotes will be really helpful.
Yes.
Okay, Bante. Thank you so much, Bante.
Yes. And Bante, I also see another situation about the translation absolute. Not only about action, but we can translate as adjective. For example, about Sattari Dhamma Desinte. So in this case, we can translate as action as well as adjective also, right?
Yes. What I mean is action is, when I say action can be written in many forms. Action can be written in verb. Action is written in gerund. Yes. Action to be done written in infinitive. Action already done in the past participle. Action which is happening in the present participle. Action which should be done in future passive participle. So they are all have the action meaning, action embodied within themselves. So when I say action, it can be an adjective, it can be a past participle, present participle, whatever.
Okay. Yes. Thank you, Bante.
Okay. Thank you for your question. So shall we proceed with the sutta? The Huhunka Sutta. Actually, it's called Hunhunka Sutta. The sutta comes with the name Hunhunka to give an explanation on this sutta. I would ask someone to translate. I'll be very happy if someone could translate, then I can explain the grammar after someone has translated. To give a brief explanation, this Hunhunka Sutta was preached to, actually it was not a sutta preached to a certain Brahmin. The Buddha has uttered utterance, Udana, when a certain Brahmin asked a question. So the name Hunhunka is, this Brahmin used to say always like because of his high conceit, so he was like he didn't care about other beings, other people. So he had a very strong mana, and also commentary says had some dosa. So therefore he always used to look down upon other beings. So he used to utter this sound. So therefore this Brahman was to the Buddha and discussion happens. So this is the thing. And also want to mention, this incident happened before the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. So there are few occasions the Buddha has uttered certain verses before the Dhammacakka. That is, he uttered to himself the Aneka Jati as he got enlightened. Then he uttered this, according to our tradition, when the daughters of the Mara came to seduce him, he also, in a discussion with both of them, three of them, Buddha had uttered some verses. Then in this Humhunka Sutta, Buddha has uttered a verse. Then we come into another sutta in the same book, the Muchalinda, the Naga king. At the end of the 6th week, he uttered a verse. Then the Tapassu Ballika, the two merchants, Buddha gave them the two Sarana, Buddha Saranang and Dhamman Saranang. Then to Upaka on the way, Buddha also uttered some Gatha. So these are the verses Buddha has preached before the Dhammacakka, but we don't consider them as the first sermon, because the reason was no one got enlightened from them, from those verses. So for your Dhamma knowledge, the first sermon given by the Buddha is called Dhammacakka Sutta. But please keep in mind, there are few instances where Buddha has preached Dhamma. These are all containing Dhamma, but they are not considered as verses, teachings, because they were not preached for the enlightenment. They were preached as a assistance for their future enlightenment. Maybe in this life or maybe in a future life. Right? So this is the background of the sutta. If anyone is volunteer to translate.
May I try, Bante?
Sure, please. We'll try the first paragraph first. Yeah, let's see.
Okay, Bante. So read the Pali first and then translate.
Yeah, Pali, you can read this just one sentence and translate.
Okay, Bante. Ewami sutang ekang samayang bagawa uruwelayang wiharati naja niranjaraya tire aja pala nigrode patama abhisambuddho. Thus have I heard, one time the Blessed One was dwelling at a goatherd banyan tree. Can I say like this, Bante?
Yeah.
Aja pala nigrode. At the bank of the Niranjara river in Uruwela village, after having become the first one enlightened. And then, Tenako pana samayena bagawa sattahang eka palangkena nisino hoti vimutti sukha pati sangwedi. Then, at that time, the Blessed One was seated in a one cross-legged posture for the entire 7 days, experiencing the bliss of liberation. Atako bagawa tassa satahasa cayena tamha samadimha uttasi. Then after 7 days, the Blessed One emerged from that attainment.
Sorry. Thank you very much. We'll continue. Before that, I'll just remind you some grammatical points. Ekan samayang is the time, accusative of time, right? Then where he was living, all were written in locative case. Uruwelayang, in the village of Uruwela. Ajapala Nigrode, it means under the banyan tree where the Godats used to come and rest. That tree was located in the bank, tire, of the Nadi Neranjara, Naja Neranjara. This is genitive case, right? Then Patamabi Sambuddho, we normally translate having enlightened as first, right, before everyone. So this is Twa after that. They make it a Jeran. They make it a Jeran and explain. Then Tenako Panasamayana, you translated very well. It is the time of instrumental time, like the instrumental of time, instrumental of time. Then Sattahang, continuously for 7 days, that when an action happens continuously throughout a certain time, we use the accusative case. Then Vimukti Sukha Patisangvedi is also a nominative case noun. So we normally make it a present participle while experiencing the bliss of the liberation. Then we also have a grammatical rule in the next sentence, Achayena. When you use the verse Achayena, the time elapsed should be written in genitive case, right? Good. So yes, can you translate the next paragraph also?
Okay, Bante. I will try, Bante. Attako anyataro hunghungka jatiko brahmano yena bagawa tenu pasangkami. Upasang kamiwa bagawata sading samodi. Then a certain Brahmin, sayer of Hung Hung, approached the Blessed One. Having approached, he exchanged friendly greetings with the Blessed One. Samodaniyang katang saraniyang witi saretwa ekamantang atasi. Having finished the friendly talk that fit to be remembered, he stood at one side. Ekamantang tito kosok brahmano bagawantang etadwoca. Standing at one side, that Brahmin said this to the Blessed One. Kitawata nuko bogotama brahmano hoti. Katami pana brahmana karana damati. To what extent a person is a Brahmin? Moreover, which qualities are the definer of Brahmin? Like what qualities make the Brahmin, I mean.
Right. Sadhu, sadhu. Thank you very much. Very nicely done.
Thank you, Bante.
Yeah. So I will go to the, I think he explained, translated very well. So we'll go to the grammatical explanation of the sutta. We have few grammatical points that I want to emphasize. Atako anyataro huhunka jatiko brahmano yena bhagava tenupa sankami. Here I'm going to emphasize two grammatical points. One is the hunhunka jatika. So when we say this word jatika, so I will share the screen of the notes. Sorry. Yes. So we have this word hunhunka jatika. So this word construction happens, we have a noun plus the word jatika. The word jatika, normally the word jati have few meanings. Jati can be birth, jati, jara, marana. Sometimes the jati can be the species we are born in. Like one kind of like dogs can be called a jati, cats can be called a jati. Sometimes it can also refer to the ethnicity, the jati. So the word that nationality and ethnicity. Now the word international normally is translated in Pali, antarjatika. Antarjatika. It seems like this was a later developed word, Pali word, but however, the word nationality and ethnicity can also refer to the word jati. So we have jati few meanings, the birth, the species, nationality, ethnicity, and so forth. So now here when we have a jatika, this is a tadvita noun, the ka is added, the word ka is added. So we'll just leave apart the grammatical definition. If we go to the normal usage of this word, when jatika is connected to a noun, that noun, so then the combined word, the noun plus jatika, it denotes a person who belongs to a certain ethnicity, a certain attribute. So for example, now this noun, whatever the noun explains, sometimes it can refer to a clan, it can refer to a race, or it can refer to one kind of quality, like one kind of a mental state, like anger, like delusion, or like lust. So these kind of, so whatever the noun explains, either it's the ethnicity, either it's the nationality, either it's the mental state, one kind of a behavioral attribute. So then the combined noun explains a person who is with that quality. Now, when we say Brahmana Jatika, it refers to a person who belongs to the Brahmin race. If we say Kujjana Jatika, Kujjana means Kujjana Jatika. I hope everyone can see the screen clearly. Kujjana Jatika. Kujjana means getting angry. A person who often gets angry is called Kujjana Jatiko. So this kind of, the word Jatika connected with this, a certain noun. It can be race, it can be ethnicity, it can be a mental state, like good or bad. or it can be now in the Huhunka Jatika, this is one of the actions he used to do. So this, when we have this kind of a combination, two words, when they are combined as a samasa, this denotes the person of who has that attribute explained by the first noun. Kujjana Jatika means a person who gets angry. Muihana Jatika means Muihana, for example. Muihana Jatika. Muihana is related to moha. Muihana. So a person who easily get deluded is like a foolish person who can easily be deceived, or a person who easily get confused is called a Muihana Jatika. So when the Jatika is added, we have to understand it explains the person who has that quality or the whatever the meaning given by the previous noun, which is in the preceding noun. Then another similar word like this is the sila. For example, Kujjana Jatika, we can also have Kujjana Sila. Sila doesn't mean the our precepts here. Sila means he has a nature of getting angry easily, right? So then we can have Kujjana Sila, we can have in good side Achara Sila, one who always respect or greet others very well. So likewise, the word Sila can also have a similar kind of a meaning. But Sila normally doesn't fit with ethnicity or a clan. So when you want to say a person of that clan, we have to use the word Jatika. But when it comes to a mental state or a quality or one kind of a habit of us, we can use both Jatika and Sila. So this is the first grammatical point. The word Jatika, and actually it's a morpheme. It's a word connected to a noun. So Jatika and Sila. But keep in mind, Jatika can be used with various nouns like ethnicity or clan, but and also with mental states and attributes. Sila is normally used for a person who has a certain action or a certain mental state. Which is frequently done. If someone gets angry once in a while, you cannot call him a Kujjana Sila. A person who gets lost once in a while, who does a fault once in a while, cannot be used this Sila or Jatika. This shows that he has this nature frequently within him. It's one kind of like an embodied characteristic in him. So this is the first point that I want to emphasize about the Jatika and Sila. If you have any questions before I proceed to the next one.
So Bandi, I remember in the Katyayana, it mentions the Shina as a habit.
Sorry,
right?
Sila as habit. Yes, habit.
Yeah,
means,
in the Katyayana.
Yeah, correct. Thank you. So then we come to the next rule. So atako anyataro kuhunka jatiko brahman. A brahmin, a certain brahmin. Anyatara is certain brahmin. So when in Sutta we have the word anyatara, means his name was not preserved. His name was not preserved in the lineage. He was not very famous. So sometimes you can have anyataro bhikkhu, a certain monk. But when Sariputta questions the Buddha, normally the sutta details Venerable Sariputto Bhagavantang etadavocha. Bhagavantam Panham Pucci. He asked a question from the Blessed One. But if the monk's name is not preserved, his name is not memorized or kept in our lineage, we use the word anyataro bhikkhu. Anyataro means a certain. So this Brahmin's real name we don't know. So anyataro huhunka jatiko brahmano. This Brahmin, the adjective of Brahmana is huhunka jatika, who has the nature of uttering out of insulting or looking down upon others. Then we come to the next grammatical rule, Yena Bhagava Tenupa Sankami. So Yena Bhagava Tenupa Sankami. Now what happened was this Brahmin approached the Buddha. Right? This Brahmin approached the Buddha. But normally we know when you approach a certain place, when you go to a certain place, normally we use the place where we go is used in the accusative case. Right? So normally the place where we go is used in the accusative case. So for example, So gamang gacchati. He goes to the village. So we can also say sa, she, vaping, the lake, gacchati, or upasankamati. We can also say approaches. Normally the place where you go, vapi is the lake, water lake. The place where you go, the place where you approach is written in the accusative case. But here the grammatical rule, the word construction, I'll explain the meaning later after explaining this. So instead of using the accusative case for the place you approach to the place you go, we can use the nominative case, but with one condition. Before and after the nominative case, you have to use yena and tena, right? Yena and tena. So instead of saying so gamang gacchati, so yena gamo. Instead of saying gamang, we have to use the nominative. Yena gamo tena gacchati. Or sa yena vaping vapi tena upa sankamati, right? So both turn into the nominative case. So this is a very important, very commonly used grammatical rule in suttas. Whenever the Buddha was approached, it's very rarely we say Buddha used in the accusative case. Sometimes it can be found in Bhagavantang. So, but in the normally very commonly the common usage is, instead of saying that in the accusative case, the person is written in the nominative case, but the rule is before and after we have to use yena and tena, right? So yena gamo tena gacchati, sa yena vapi tena upasankam. So this is the second grammatical rule. So instead of saying the place where we go, you can use in accusative case normally. Very rarely you can use the dative case, but with certain conditions. For example, appo saggaya gacchati, right? This is a very rare case in dative. The place where you go can be written in dative. Appo saggaya gacchati, a few people goes to the heavens. Saggaya is a dative case because in Buddha declination, you remember Buddho Buddha, Buddham Buddhe, Buddhena Buddhevi Buddhehi, Buddhasa Buddhaya. This is a dative case, special dative case. So instead of using the accusative, sometimes we can use the dative case to the place where you go or the place where you approach. So this is the normal usage. But here what we have done, we have used the nominative case, but with a certain with some certain rules. That rule is yena and tena should precede and proceed the noun, before and after the noun. So this one, if we explain it in grammatically, the thing is here yena and tena has the meaning of locative meaning. So now I'll add another rule. Now first in the beginning I mentioned the first rule you can see in the lecture notes. Time can be written in locative, accusative and instrumental cases. The location is where the action happens. Location is where the action occurs. So in grammatical books they say where the subject and the object is placed. But in the actual sense, where the action is happening. So the location is normally written in locative case, but in some occasions, which is quite common, we have used the instrumental case and also accusative case. Similar to the time, we can use locative, accusative and instrumental to the location even, not only for the time. So you can see the time and location can be used in a similar way. So there are examples given, like you can see this in the Mahasamaya Sutta, when the 4 guardian deities, their location was explained. Purattimena Datarato, the Dataratta guardian king lives in the eastern side, but it explains Purattimena, That is the instrumental case. Then Dakkinena Virulhako. In the southern side, Virulha, the guardian king, lives in the southern side. Dakkinena, not Dakkine, not Dakkinasmi, Dakkinena. Then Pachimena Virupakko, the Virupakka guardian king lives in Pachimena in the western side. So all three were written in instrumental case. Then when it comes to Kuera, Kuera, the king of the Yakas, he lives in northern side. But the verse comes, Kuero Uttarang Disang. Not Uttarena, not Uttarasmi, Uttarang Disang in the accusative case. So in the one verse of Mahasamaya Sutta, you can see the location, instead of using the instrument locative case, the verse is given in instrumental and accusative. So first three directions, east, south, and west, were written in instrumental case. Dakkinena Purattimena Dataratto, Dakkinena Virulhako, Pachimena Virupakko. But the northern side, Kuero Uttarang Disang, not Uttarena Uttarasmi. So that's why location can be written in accusative and instrumental. But most commonly, it's locative. So now, this is another additional rule. Now I come to the rule which I explained now. It's the, instead of using accusative or dative, we are using a nominative case to the place where someone approaches. So the grammatical theory behind this is, so the person, yena gamo hoti tena gacchati. This is the real construction. So this is a main clause and subordinate clause is there. With the yena tena, we call it, how do we call it?
Relative clause, Bhante?
Relative, thank you. Yeah, relative clause. So relative clause, relative and the main clause. So tena gacchati means he goes. Now here tena is instrumental case, but now in the previous line you can see instrumental of location, not the instrumental of instrument. Instrumental case sometimes refers to the instrument where what you use to do the action. Sometimes instrumental case can be written, if you look at the screen, it can be used for the cause, instrument, cause, instrumental of cause. Sometimes it can refer to the time. Most commonly it's referred to the instrument that you use to do the action. But here it refers to the location. So here your yena means, if I simplified it, it's yatta. Yatta is where. So where the village is, yena gamo hoti. So he, tena also is in the location. Tatta, he approaches there. So tatta gacchati. So where the village is, he goes there. So actually in this sentence you can see, if you go and analyze grammatically, he has not got, it's not mentioned that he goes to the village, he goes to the place where the village is. He goes to the place where the village is. That is what the sentence is. But in the reality, when you go to the place where the village is, you go to the village, right? So that is actually, it has the same meaning. So here, the real construction, grammatical construction is, normally to keep in mind, just shortcut, you can just remember the place where you go is written in accusative or dative, very rarely. Very rarely means occasionally used in dative. Then another way is using the nominative case. But in the nominative case, we have a special condition. That is, you have to use yena and tena before and after. But yena and tena comes from the yatta and tatta, means locative meaning. So if you simplified it to understand yatta tatta. So instead of saying, so yena gamo tena gacchati, you can say, so yatta gamo tatta gacchati. That is also correct. But that usage is not found in the Tipitaka much. That's the problem. So yatta gamo tatta gacchati is also 100% correct. So yang gamo tang gacchati also correct, because you can use the accusative case also. That is possible. So you can directly mention so gamang gacchati. That is also correct. So all are possible. So but what we normally find is three ways of saying. Directly mentioned in the accusative, directly mentioned in the dative, and using the nominative case with yena and tena behind and after. But the meaning is, you have to understand that yena and tena is the locative meaning. So these are second grammatical rule I would like to discuss today. So any questions regarding this?
Bante, so
Yeah.
like when we do the translation, like is it okay if we just translate it simply like what I did before, like he approached the blessed one?
Yes,
Like,
yes, sure. There is no problem. No problem.
okay, Bante,
That's
like
normally that's how we translate in English.
because
You
there
don't
are
have to go and
some.
explain that. Yeah.
Oh, okay, Bante. Like because there are some view that maybe like he want to more translate it more literally like that, Bante. So
If you are teaching grammar, maybe you have to explain what is behind the grammatical meaning. But if you are doing a translation to read the sutta, I don't think that is necessary. Personally, I don't
okay,
think that
Bante.
is. But if you are giving a grammatical lecture, like teaching the Pali with that, you have to explain it like.
Okay, Bante. Thank you so much, Bante.
So then we.
Okay.
Yes.
Bante, I have one more question.
Yes.
So if let's say if we take the sentence we just wrote right there. So yatha gamo hoti. So this yatha, it seems to be like an adverb.
Seems to be like an. I beg your pardon.
Adverb.
Adverb. Okay, right?
Yes. Is that right?
Yes, this is an adverb. Adverbial clause. Yes.
Thank you.
So then I'll go to the next grammatical rule. So the next one is, it's a very simple one. Yeah. So then Yena Bhagava Tenupasang, he approached the Blessed One. Then Upasankamitva Bhagavantang Saddin Bhagavata Saddin Samodi. So now we have another. The next sentence is started with Upasankami. You can see a pattern. So Tenupasankami means if you divide this, if you read the Sandhi, Tena plus Upasankami. He approached. So now this is the past tense now. No Upasankamati. Upasankamati become Upasankami. He approached the past tense. Now in Pali, this is a very common usage in Pali. When you end a certain sentence with a certain verb, mostly, actually, it's most cases is the past tense. When you end the past sentence with the past tense verb, the next sentence you start with the gerund of that verb. That is a very common usage in Pali. You can see in many suttas. So when you, I'll repeat again, when you end a certain sentence with a certain verb, the next sentence can start with its gerund. So you can see this in the Mangala Sutta also. Yena Bhagava Tenupasankami. Upasankamitva. Right? He approached and having approached. He approached the Buddha and having approached, he started the next sentence with its gerund. This is a very common usage. We will see this in many places. Then Bhagavata Saddin Sammodi. Saddin is together. Bhagavata is the instrumental case. Sammodi is a past tense. He enjoyed, like they shared friendly greetings with them. Sammodi means they became very happy with each other, right? With proper discussion. Then he enjoyed, like had a friendly discussion with them. Then again starts Sammodhaniyang Katan Saraniyang Vitisarita. We normally translate Sammodhaniyang means fit to be fit for friendly discussion. So Sammodhaniyang Katang, Sammodhaniyang grammatically means which is fit to be used as friend in a friendly discussion. Sammodhaniyang Katang you can translate as friendly talk, right? Saraniyang, Sammodhaniyang Katang Saraniyang. So Saraniyang here means it also refers to the Katang. So the speech which friendly speech Saraniyang, which can be remembered again and again. Because if you had a very pleasant talk with someone, a pleasant experience with someone, you keep on, it comes into your, it's something very pleasant to be recalled. If it was an unpleasant incident, we even don't like to recall it. So that's why that same speech, which was friendly, becomes saraniya. Saraniya I have given in the vocabulary, if you can refer to the vocabulary. Saraniya means something to be remembered, something to be remembered, suitable to you. Vitisaritva. So normally Vitisariti means you spend time. Sometimes, normally we, if my memory is correct. But here in this sentence, the commentary gives the meaning nittapitva, having finished. So this is Jaran. Having finished, that is how they give the nittapitva. So the commentarial translation on this is nittapitva. Nittapitva means having finished. Having finished the friendly talk with him. Ekamantang attasi. Attasi comes from tittati. He stands in one side. Ekamantang, in one side. Right? He stood. He didn't sit here. Right. So then ekamantang tito koso brahmano bhagavantang etadavoja. Then now we come into another grammatical rule, which is which I'll be explaining in the lessons to come. This will continue. This lesson will continue about this word tito. So here tito is in nominative case. Ekamantang tito koso brahmano bhagavantang oti. Ekamantang tito koso brahman. The brahmin who stood. We can translate the brahmin who stood. But actual translation goes, having stood by side, the brahmin said this to the Buddha, right? Having stood by side. So I'll come to this point. Now this tito is a past participle. So why did I translate it in a gerund form? I share the screen. Is the lecture notes. So now we have come into a new lesson, past participle. Past participle can have 5 functions. It can have 5 functions. What are the 5 functions? It can be used as a noun. It can be used as a direct noun. Right? Then it can be used as an adjective. So when it is used as an adjective to a certain noun, it should fit, mostly it should fit with the gender, number, and case of the noun. That's the rule. Past participle can be adjective, can be a noun. It can sometimes be an absolute. Right? Absolute. I mentioned last time, absolute means when you explain another action with one action with another action. When you explain a certain action with another action, we use the absolute form. Absolute can be written in, if you look at the lecture notes, the cursor, absolute can be written in locative, genitive, nominative, accusative, ablative. Mostly is locative, genitive, and nominative. Right? These are the most common. So absolute means you explain a certain action with the help of another action. So if the both actions are happening at the same time, we use the present participle. So the second action will be written in the original verb. The first action will be written in the present participle because both actions are happening together. The next thing is you explain one action with an action already happened. It means after I went, he came out. After the devotee went to the temple, Buddha preached the Dhamma. So in this sentence, the main verb is the preaching the Dhamma, but it happened after a certain action. So if the certain action, the main action is being explained by an action which has already happened, we use the past participle. So that's why the absolute, we come to a lecture of absolute later, right? These are giving the, so you have listened and you get familiar with these terms. So absolute can be used in the present participle, can be used in the past participle. Future passive participle also can be used in the absolute. If when something is when you are obliged to do something, like when I'm supposed to do something, when I'm supposed to do that, I went there. when he is supposed to preach Dhamma, he went to the monastery. So in such a case also we use the absolute form, because when he is supposed to do a certain action, instead of doing that, he did something else, or something like that. Or he completed his job. When he's supposed to preach Dhamma, he preached the Dhamma. So in such occasions also we use the absolute case. So absolute is, in simple terms, when we are explaining an action with another action, we use the absolute. If both the actions are happening at the same time, we use the present participle for the action, for the one action. Then if the action has already happened, we use the past participle. If the action is supposed to be done, we use the future passive participle. So these are the three usages. Then also, this past participle can sometimes be used as a verb. Instead of a verb, we can use the past participle. I'll give examples in a different handout, a different explanation on this. For the time being, I'm just explaining this. So these are the 4 usages of absolute, right? 4 usages of absolute. So in these 4 usages, past participle of the past participle. If I take the absolute, past participle, PP absolute. Past participle absolute, if you look into the absolute, can be written locative, genitive, nominative, accusative, ablative. Just leave behind these 2 because these are not very common. I gave it for advanced students who is doing some research. So these 3 are the most common. So now this is another rule that we have to keep in mind when we are using locative and genitive. When to use locative? Locative and genitive has no difference. They are used they are interchangeable. So now I mentioned that absolute is you explain a certain action with another action. Now, if that both actions are happening at the same time, present participle. If the one action has already happened, past participle. If one action is supposed to do, future passive participle. Now these 2 actions, if both the actions, if the 2 actions are done by 2 different people, 2 different beings, then we have to use either locative or genitive. For example, while the Buddha was walking, I stood up. So the actions were done by 2 different agents. You use the locative and genitive. If both actions are done by the same person, we use the nominative case, right? If both actions are done by the same person, we use the nominative case. That is the rule. So now here we discuss 4 usages of absolute, the past participle. Out of that, we now took out the absolute meaning only. That absolute, you can use locative, genitive, nominative. Locative and genitive is used when both actions are done by 2 different people. If both actions are done by the same person, we use the same noun. Now, for example, I saw a tree while I was going to the village. So the seeing action and the going action, both were done by the same person. So in that case, we use the nominative case, right? We use the nominative case. This is the point I want to come. It's a long journey, but anyway. Now, if this nominative absolute, past participle nominative absolute, right? Past participle nominative absolute. What does it mean? One action is explained by another action called absolute. Because it's a past participle, one action has already happened before the other action, right? So absolute means you explain a certain action with another action. If it is a past participle, it indicates that the first action has already happened before the main verb. So what does it mean? If a certain action has happened before the main verb, another word for this is gerund, right? It's the gerund. Gerund means pachitva, gantva, and so forth. So if an action which happens before the main verb is a gerund. So therefore, the rule is past participle absolute written in nominative case is equal to a gerund. Right? Is equal to a gerund. So I gave a lot of information. with the time, you'll be able to, some would be able to digest this because I know it's too much information. But anyway, so now we'll go to the sutta. We'll go to the sutta and see what kind of a usage we find here. Ekamantang tito koso brahmano bhagavantang etada vocha. Right? Ekamantang tito koso brahmano bhagavantang etada vocha. So he stood beside, it explains, he stood beside ekamantang attasi. Ekamantang tito koso brahmano bhagavantang etada. So they have two actions, standing action and etada vocha, the action of speaking. Etang avocha, he spoke, he said thus. Now two actions. So second action is explained by the first action because he uttered having stood, right? So now what happens, this is an absolute construction. Two action, this action is happening after this. So it's a past participle. Tito is a past participle. It means this action has already happened before this. And it's in the nominative case past participle, absolute meaning is equal to gerund. So instead of saying tito, you can say tattva. They are equal. Ekamantang tito, ekamantang tattva. Having stood one side, he said this to the Blessed One. Now I'll remind you the previous rule that I mentioned. We mentioned if you end up a certain sentence, a sentence with a certain verb, normally in Pali, you can start the next sentence with the gerund of that verb. Gerund of upasankami, upasankamitva. Now what happened? Attasi is stood. Gerund of attasi is tattva. Tattva. So it starts with ekamantang, ekamantang attasi, he stood beside. Having stood beside, ekamantang tattva. So instead of tattva, they have used tito. Why is that? So gerund is equal to the nominative case past participle absolute. I'm using three terms. Nominative case past participle absolute is equal to gerund. So instead of saying the gerund, they have used the past participle form, right? So the same way. So the idea is same. Normally you end a sentence in Pali. Normally the next sentence you can start with this past participle, right? Ekamantang tito koso brahmano bhagavantang. Having stood beside, Brahman means said thus to the Blessed. Etada vocha, if you divide it, it becomes etang avocha. Right? Nigahita changes into da. Right? Nigahita changes into da. Etada vocha. So now, to conclude, Kittavata nuko bho gotama brahmano. This is the question he asked. Kittavata nuko bro brahmana. Kittavata nuko bo gotama brahmano hoti khatamecha pana brahmana karana dhammati. Now as Robin asked, is there the ti, the quotation. You can say this is iti. Iti become ti. Right? Iti become ti.
Okay, Bhante.
Right? So this comes at the end of the sentence. So then it's a quotation. Kittavata nuko bo gotama brahmano. Kittavata is to what extent? To it's like he's asking the amount, how much quality, how much amount of quality. That's kittavata. So I think I have given the, sorry for that, where sometimes I am not very good in giving direct translation words. So kittavata, to what extent, how far, with what respect, right? So they're asking to what amount the question is asked, to what amount, right? So we'll see the question. He's asking to what amount, to which extent bo gotam. Bo is another way Brahmins used to address others. It's a one way of alapana. Gotama is the name of the Buddha's clan, right? Nu indicates the question form. Nu says that this is a question, right? Even the word kittavata, because of interrogation form, still it's a question form. So without nu also you can get the question meaning, but here they have added the nu also. Ko has no meaning. It's just a just a filling a word. Hittavata nuko bho Gotama, Venerable Gotama, to what extent? Brahmano hoti, one becomes a Brahman, one becomes a Brahmin. To what extent one becomes a Brahman? What are the so he's asking to what extent one becomes a Brahman. Khatamecha pana Brahmana karana dhamma. So Khatamecha means what are, which are, right? What are the Khatamecha pana Brahmana karana dhamma. This pana shows that this sentence is connected to the previous one. So he asked to what extent one is a Brahmin, and he's explaining it. What are the qualities that makes you a Brahmin, right? What are the qualities that makes you a Brahmin? Church says that it connects the next sentence, and also, right? He's asking two questions. So Brahmana karana dhamma. This is the grammatical point that I want to emphasize for the as the last rule for today's class. Brahmana karana. Brahmana karana dhamma. Brahmana karana dhamma. You can find Brahmana plus karana. You can find a similar formation in Vasala Sutta, Vasala karana. Right? And also if you look into the sutta, itself, they are within the brackets, you can see. Within the brackets, you can see Brahmana karaka. Karaka. This is found in some scripts, but it was put in the brackets in the Chatta Sanghayana. The Chatta Sanghayana group selected karana as is a reliable or better word. Brahmana karaka and Brahmana karana. So they are identical. They don't have any difference. Brahmana karana and Brahmana karaka. So instead of only saying Brahmana karana, we can say Brahmana karaka also. Vasala karana, Vasala karaka. So this word also found in the commentary literature, Buddha karaka dhamma, right? Karaka, not karaka, karaka. Karaka. So karaka here means karotiti karaku. One who makes something is called karaka. Karana normally is a bhava kitaka. It means it refers to the abstract form of the verb, normal, abstract action. Karana, this ana suffix normally is used for the ing, the doing or going, something like that. But in this sentence, in this case, karana is equal to karaka. That's why within bracket is mentioned. Karotiti karano. So one who does something is called karana here. It's equal to karaka. What does it mean? What makes a Brahmin? What makes you a Brahmin? It means what are the dhamma is the qualities. What are the qualities that makes you a Brahmin? Vasala karana, vasara karaka means what are the qualities that makes you an outcast, a vasala. Buddha karaka, what are the qualities that makes you a Buddha? It's the parami. It's the parami. What are the qualities which makes you a Brahmana? So according to the Brahmanism, you have to be born in a proper lineage and you have to have certain qualities mentioned in the Vedas. But according to the Buddha, to be called someone a Brahmin, you should have sila, samadhi, panya, and ultimately one who is an arahant is called a Brahmin. So to what extent one is called a vasala? What are the realities which makes someone a vasala? That is, he doesn't support his parents, he doesn't do the good things, he lies and so forth. So this karana and karaka, now this is the rule. If karana and karaka are connected to a noun, like jatika, jatika is connected to a noun. Remember we gave another example. So likewise, karaka and karana also, when it is connected, it shows that the realities or the qualities that makes you a person mentioned in the noun. Noun plus karana and karaka, right? So if it connected with the Buddha karaka, one who makes you a qualities which makes you a Buddha. Pacceka Buddha Karaka, one qualities which makes you a Pacceka Buddha. Vasala Karaka or Vasala Karana, that is the qualities, that virtues that makes you a Vasala. Brahmana Karana, Brahmana Karaka, the virtues, qualities that makes you a Brahman. So this is the another rule. So keep in mind. So these are the Karana and Karaka has such a meaning when it is connected with another noun. So these are the we discussed a few rules today. First one is about the Jatika and Sila. Then we discussed about the nominative case used in the place where we go. Place where we go can be written accusative, sometimes dative, and also in nominative case, but under one condition, you have to use yena and tena after and before. But yena and tena is not the normal instrumental, it's the meaning of location. So instrument of location. We have instrument of time, instrument of cause, instrument of location. Then the next point, it was a bit long explanation. The past participle have 4 functions. We'll be giving detailed explanations later. It can act as a noun, it can act as an adjective, it can act as an absolute, and it can act as a verb. Instead of a verb, you can use a past participle. We'll see lots of examples in future suttas. So when it is used as an absolute, absolute means a certain action is explained by another action. So if the both actions are happening at the same time, we use the present participle. If the action has already happened, we use the past participle. If the action is out to do, we use the future passive participle. Then we take the past participle absolute. The action has already happened. So in the past participle absolute, when you use locative and genitive with the different agents, when the agents are different, the actions are done by 2 people, we use the locative and genitive. If the action is done by the same person, we use the nominative. So this nominative absolute past participle. Past participle absolute written in nominative case is equal to gerund because it is the same, it is the action done by the same person before the final verb. So it's equal to a gerund, right? And also I mentioned in Pali, you end a sentence with a certain verb, past tense verb, mostly a past tense verb. The next sentence, you can start with its gerund. Then finally, Karana and Karaka, when it is connected to a noun, it denotes a person, denotes a quality which makes you a person mentioned by the noun, right? So these are the explanations that I would like to render. And we leave the Sugata and we proceed to the next sutta on Friday. If you have, I think already time has passed, I can give you one question or one more, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Bante, may I ask Bante?
Sure.
Yes, Bante. First, I want to say sorry. I forgot to translate the Bo Gotama. So Venerable Gotama, isn't it, Bante?
Yes,
Venerable
Gotama.
And then Bante, about the Brahmana Karana Dhamma, Bante. So combined together, it is becoming like some noun, like Bante.
Yeah, it's a one noun. It's a one noun.
Yes, Bante. So
Brahmana Karana Dhamma is adjective of Dhamma.
Yes, Bante. So if we translate it, can we translate it like, what are the qualities that make you a Brahmin? There is a verb in there, but actually this one is a noun, Bante. So what is the better way?
What are the qualities which makes you a Brahmin? Yeah, because the Karana has the action meaning. So so you are using it as an relative, explaining it as a clause. So it's no problem. What are the qualities which makes you a Brahmin? Because the explanation gives us karoti karana. One who makes someone a Brahmin. One who makes something is called karana here. Normally the word is karaka, but karana and karaka both can be used in the same way. So you can use like that, no problem.
Oh, okay, Bante. Thank you so much, Bante.
So Bante, you said the past participle is 4 functions, but I remember 5 functions.
Yeah, 5 function was like last time I gave the gerund function separately, right? So that gerund is equal to the past participle ablative, absolute nominative.
Okay.
Right? So I gave it as a separate function in the class last time.
Okay.
Bante, I have a question, but it looks like maybe it might take some time. So maybe we talk about that question next time, Bante.
Okay, Doctor. Sure. If you can explain the question, I can think about it.
Oh, okay. All right, Bante. So it's about the, what is that, nominative absolute past participle.
Yes.
I've been thinking about this for a while, because so what is the use of that concept? Because so right now you said that the nominative absolute past participle is equivalent to gerund. So maybe that's the reason. But before, I think that for nominative absolute past participle, is it like a similar to adjective? So why do we need that? Why do we need to have nominative absolute past participle?
Oh, yeah, that's you're correct. It needs we have to think and answer that, right?
Right, Bante. Yeah.
Yeah. So shall we discuss next week about that?
Sure. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for the question. Yeah, it's a very difficult question to answer. We'll think about it.
Okay. Thank you, Bante.
We'll have a discussion on that. Okay, then shall we call it a day?
Okay, thank you, Bante.
Thank you so much, Bante.
Wish you all the best, and thank you for participating in this class. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
So, Ms. Ryan, would you like to summarize this lecture?
I think it's better to give somebody else an opportunity, I think.
No, I think today's lecture is too much for beginners.
Okay, then I'll do it. Okay.
Yeah, can do it if you wish.
Okay. Thank you, Ryan.
Okay, I'll do it. Okay, thank you.